One of my problems with a lot of science fiction stories is that in them, people nowadays like to create a them versus us narrative where the humans are the bad guys and the aliens are the good guys and we just don't understand them and blah, blah, blah. I kind of got sick of that. Not that there can't be entertainment from conflict, but the fact is, I kind of wanted to see a little bit more nuance. And I want to thank Lark, especially for helping me come up with this idea. He was very instrumental in it. We call it Terra Nirvana. Basically, the story goes like this. This is the story that we created. Humanity has discovered another planet that's very similar to Earth, but a little bit more pristine. We call it Terra Nirvana. Instead of terra firma, Terra Nirvana. And when humanity started landing there, they discovered that the planet was inhabited by another, more primitive alien race. But instead of going to war right away with the alien race, the two decided to try to work together. Humanity was allowed to set up sister cities, which were sparsely located cities all around the planet, and they wouldn't interfere on the locals' land, the Nirvanites' land. They can live how they like, they can do what they want, and if they want to integrate into human society and learn more about our technology and way of life, they are free to. And if we want to go into their towns and camps and learn more about their way of life, we are free to. It's a share and share like system, and for a few years this works out great. But as so often happens in any civilized society, there will be rabble rousers who want to preach victimhood, or they want to create a false sense of entitlement where they feel like they need things. And what's one of the best ways to do that? Latch onto a victimhood complex, latch onto a we're victimized, we're going to virtue signal, that kind of thing. So this group that call themselves the Outliers, they believe that the sister cities were wrong to be established in the first place, and that they're oppressing the poor Nirvanites who own this planet first. Now, at first, the Nirvanites are kind of like, "What are you talking about? There's nothing wrong. We allowed them to set up. We share technology and information with each other. There's no problem." But as is so often what happens with any kind of virtue signaler, no, you shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. I'll speak for you. And eventually, many Nirvanites naively started believing, yeah, maybe they're onto something. Maybe we do deserve better treatment, even though they're already getting decent treatment as it is. This leads to conflict between the Nirvanites who actually like what the sisters are doing, humans who side with the sister cities, and then the Outliers and all the Nirvanites who blindly followed them. And this turns into a big civil war between the two, in which the humans actually ran into a bit of a problem because the fighting is going on inside the cities, causing massive loss of life. And it's killing Nirvanites as well, which is really bad because Nirvanites that die in the conflict start siding with the Outliers. So eventually a change has to be made, and so the sister cities begin work on a super soldier project called the Jiaotongdi, which I'm not great at Mandarin, but I was trying to find the closest Mandarin word for Templar or knight that I could, and Jiaotongdi was the closest I could get. Because it was developed by a Chinese physiologist and scientist who was trying to create a super soldier serum. Well, they created the Jiaotongdi, which is a special super soldier group, which think a Halo Spartan, like think something like that, only with very futuristic armor, a little even like something like what you'd see on the Arkham Knight, from the Arkham Knight games. Very similar to that. Anyway, the Jiaotongdi help turn the fight around, and they expel the Outliers outside of the walls of the sister city. If they think that the sister cities are so bad, they can live outside the walls. That is the prelude to the actual story. Then the current story, what's been happening is the Outliers keep harassing, trying to sneak into the sister cities, cause trouble, and where they usually go is they go to the slums. The slums are the outlier territories in the sister cities where you have the impoverished people, the people who live day-to-day laboring, and it's not that they're oppressed, but it's that their lives are not as good as those who are aristocratic, like you would find in any society. And so they tend to be a bit more sympathetic to the Outliers because they're like, yeah, we understand what it's like to suffer. Now, the main characters are three kids who grew up in the slums together. Two of them are human. One of them is a Nirvanite girl. Now, they grew up as best friends. They played in the slums together until one day one of them disappeared. None of them know where he went. So the Nirvanite girl and the other boy both grow up without him. The Nirvanite girl then disappears during an outlier raid where they kidnap people from the slums to take and recruit into their camps. So now it's just one boy left, named James. Now, years pass, and one day James is approached by a Zhao Tongdi soldier who reveals that he is actually James's former friend. It turns out that Zhao Tongdi initiation requires certain genetic anomalies within the person to allow for the mutations to take place, and he had the right makeup. And there is no such thing as voluntary Zhao Tongdi work. If you have the genetic makeup, you're going in for the conditioning. And so he didn't get a choice. But now he's managed to sneak back into the slums to meet with his old friend. However, James at this point has kind of said, you know what, you left us, you know? You quit. You left us behind and you never said anything. And of course the response is, how could I say anything? Like, how could I reach out to you? How could I find you? I was in the middle. I was being trained. I was being conditioned. I've been fighting wars. Like, and it turns into an argument between the two. And then he goes, well, what about Lila? What about her? Like, where's Layla? And he goes, she's not here anymore. You know, she was taken by an outlier raid, and this kind of breaks them both apart because neither had any idea what happened to the other, and it turns into a conflict between the two. So when James is leaving after kind of saying we're not friends anymore, like we used to be friends, we're not friends anymore, he starts leaving to go back to his home when he gets ambushed by some outlier spies who saw him talking to his Yao Tongdi and want to know what he knows. James could say, but at the same time, he still, somewhere in his heart, considers his old friend still there and refuses to do it. Luckily, he gets saved by the Zhao Tongdi, who followed him and managed to rescue him from the situation. From there, the two decide to work together. The Zhao Tongdi friend decides to help raise James up out of the muck of the slums so that he can actually have a better life for himself, and they decide to both look into what happened to Layla and where she went after being kidnapped by the outliers. What they discover is that the outliers are planning this huge terroristic action that could break the sister cities indefinitely, and they all have to work together to stop it. Now, you might be thinking, a lot of that seems vague. You don't even have names for a lot of the main characters. And you're right, and that's because this project, this story, despite existing for a couple years now, is still in its conceptual design phase. And a big reason for that is about the time I was really getting the story rolling, I was getting the YouTube channel started. And so I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and really plot out everything I wanted. There's a lot more I want to do with it, and only a few people even know it exists. Like I said, Lark knows it exists because we discussed it. My friend Aaron knows it exists because James is heavily based on him, and he was helping me push the idea. And one other friend exists who is an artist on DeviantArt who drew the design for Layla. So that is where that story goes. It's not a lot, and I did want to share it because it kind of goes to show two things. The first one is that a lot of my story ideas, whether they be good or bad, don't go far outside the conceptual phase after a while, and that's usually a sign to me that it's not going to go anywhere. If I can't get it out of the conceptual phase and into the rough draft phase, maybe it's a concept that needs more time and thought put into it. One thing that I think is a problem with a lot of writers these days is they come up with a concept but don't go further than that. Like, they'll just say, okay, here's a cool concept. And then I say, okay, well, where's that going? But don't you like the concept? Like, I remember this was a while ago. I had someone approach me about a story idea that they had for a fan fiction thing. And they said, hey, Raven, what do you think about this? And then they laid out their concept for me. And I said, okay, that's interesting. So what's the character going to do? Like, what's their plan? What's their goal? They had no answer. They didn't know what to tell me because they hadn't thought that far ahead. They created a character concept and a setting concept, but they had no idea what the character's goals were, what they were going to do, what the end result was, where they were going, and that's because he hadn't gone beyond the conceptual phase, which is fine. You always want to start with a conceptual phase, but if you can't get past that, then maybe the story needs some more time or work, or maybe it's something that needs to be put aside for a later date, if ever picked up again. Now, I do want to pick this one up again because there's something there that I really do like. I think that it gets very boring and tiring to have the same old story about, oh, humanity bad, aliens good. I'm sick of that. I'm really sick of that. So I'd like to come back to that. So I don't want to abandon this entirely, but that's the first thing that it teaches us. The second thing that it teaches is that you can have really cool multiple conflicts and still create a very solid story around them. Like, for example, you have the larger conflict of the outliers versus the sister cities. It's not just the Nirvanites versus humanity, you know, and it's not just, oh, some humans good, some humans bad. No. It's more of two different ideologies clashing. One that preaches victimhood and self-service, and the other that preaches government and control and stability. Both sides have their negatives, and I point that out, and both sides have their positives. And I work very hard to point that out in the story as I was writing out the concept. But again, it needed more time to think it through, and I need to put more time into it. But the other aspect of this is that I wanted to build a smaller conflict as well. The conflict between the friends, the three friends, James and the others. Like, because we're going to see later that Layla has her own conflicts to deal with, that she dealt with after being kidnapped. Training in the Xiaotongdi was very demanding and opened up a lot of problems within the sister cities. And James, of course, living in the slums, had his own difficulties to deal with. There was a lot that I wanted to explore with this, and maybe juggling all those things together made this more complicated than it needed to be. Not that I disliked the story, I still very much enjoyed working on it, but there you go. So, what do you guys think? I don't have a lot of pictures for this. I don't have a lot of, like, cool design and art for it because, like I said, only a handful of people knew about the story. Because I wasn't sure where I was going with it in the first place. It was just a concept idea, and I usually don't start telling people about my ideas until I get beyond the concept phase. But anyway, if you like the story, let me know down in the comment section below, and that's about all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.